What's up, y'all? I'm gonna show you guys how to do a remix. I'm gonna be doing Kiss Me Through the Phone by Soulja Boy. It's a classic. We all love it. And my remix is actually out on all platforms right now. So if you want to check out the full thing, you can hear it on my channel, or the Spotify link will be in the description. All right, so let's get into it. So the first thing about doing a remix is the vocals. And unfortunately, due to copyright laws, you are not allowed to use the vocals from the original track unless you have explicit permission from the artist or the label or the copyright owner. But what you can do is you can either sing the vocals yourself, or you can hire another vocalist to sing the vocals. So that way, since you're not using any of the audio from the original song, it's counted as a cover instead of a remix. And it's a lot easier to get a cover license than it is to get permission for a remix. So that way you can drop your song on Spotify and all the platforms and you can make money from it. So I decided to sing the vocals myself, and I also pitched them up a little bit. So here's what they sound like.
Baby, you know that I miss you. I wanna get with you tonight, but I cannot, baby girl, and that's the issue.
So I have this main vocal in the center, and then I have these two doubles on the left and right. And on each vocal track, I just have some EQ and some compression, and then CLA vocals with some more EQ and compression. And then they're all going into this group track, which just has some effects on it that I've automated throughout the track. It's got some reverb on here and a utility just for some volume automation and some sidechain and some extra EQ. And that group is being sent to a return track for the main reverb. All right, so now that we have the vocals, we can get into the break section. So I just have this pad playing the chords. This is just a serum preset. And then underneath that, I have a respace, which is another serum preset. Here's what that sounds like. And then halfway through the break section, I just added this snare roll to build up into the drop. And you can hear I'm automating some reverb to increase as it goes on, and I'm also automating an EQ to cut out the lows. And then I also have this like low pass kick that's also kind of building up. So yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit of low end into the build-up to kind of lead into the drop. And right at the start of the song, I wanted to add that iconic synth from the original song to go into the break section. So I recreated the original sound in Serum, and then I just added some reverb and a filter sweep. So here's what that sounds like. And then lastly, I just have a bunch of effects and risers and white noise and stuff. And then going into the drop, I just have this drum fill. And here's what everything sounds like together so far going into the drop.
Baby, you know that I miss you. I wanna get with you tonight, but I cannot, baby girl, and that's the issue. Girl, you know I miss you. I just wanna kiss you, but I can't right now, so baby, kiss me through.
All right, so now we're gonna get into the drop. I'm going for like a hyper techno kind of vibe. So for the first half of the drop, I'm gonna use the vocals as kind of the main instrument. And so what I did was I put some side chain on the vocals, and then I just used some volume automation to do kind of a trance gate kind of thing. So here's what the drop vocals sound like. And then underneath that, I just have two basses. I have this one, which is just a basic sub bass to fill up the low end. And then for the mids and the high end, I have this other one. And here's what they both sound like together. And then we just have this fat kick drum with some EQ. And then halfway through this part of the drop, I also brought back in that pad from the verse just to make it sound a little bit more full and to lead into the second half of the drop. So here's what the first half of the drop sounds like all together.
Miss you, I just wanna kiss you, but I can't right now, so baby, kiss me through the
Yeah, I also introduced this open hat halfway through. And then for the second half of the drop, I want to ditch the vocals and just have like a synth lead playing the same melody. So we got this lead, which is just a serum preset. And to make it sound a little bit thicker, I doubled it with this other synth. So there's our leads, and we also have that pad still going, and I also added another pad. And then I just added some more drums. We've got a clap and a couple of hi-hat loops and a crash. And then of course we got a little white noise sweep. All right, so here's the whole drop all together.
Miss you, girl, you know I miss you. I
right, so for the second break section of the song, I didn't really want to do the rap vocals from the original song, so I'm just going to keep using the vocals from the hook. But I'm going to try and change it up a little bit from the first break. So I added this percussion loop and I added a kick drum under it. But other than that, I'm using the same 2 pads from earlier, and I'm also using the respace from the first half of the song. But then to switch it up a little bit, I'm going to go into this longer build-up section. So I got this clap layered on top of the kick for the build-up. And then I also added in 2 plucks doing 2 different melodies. So here's what the first one sounds like. And then here's what the second pluck sounds like. And here's what they both sound like together. And then I just did like a vocal chop.
Kiss me through the phone. Kiss me through the phone. I'll see you later on.
And so that builds up into the real build up. You know, it's like a build up into a build up. And so for this section, I have the leads from the drop playing the drop melody. And then I also layered them with some chords. So I have 2 synths layered on top of each other playing the same chords. And here's what the first one sounds like. And here's the second one. And here's what they both sound like together with the leads on top. Oh, and I also did this cool little thing in like the silent sections, like in between the melody notes, where I just took the lead synth and I just played like 1 note of it and I put a lot of reverb on it, and then I bounced that out into another track and then I reversed it. So now you get like a reverse reverb kind of thing going into the note. And I also added an auto pan with some automation on the rate. So it kind of like flips between your ears really fast. So here's what that sounds like with the melody. And it's a good way to fill up the empty space if you have like some empty space in between the notes in your melody. And then we're doing a big build up. So we got some snare rolls and a crash. And then I added a couple of risers. And then on the master channel, I added this plugin called Endless Smile, which is super cool for buildups. You just automate the intensity knob and it adds a bunch of effects. It's basically like a whole buildup in one knob. So here's what the buildup section sounds like all together. And now we're going into the last drop, so I added a couple more fills. And this time for the drop, we're throwing in everything. So we got all the drums going with the hi-hats and everything. We got the bass going, and we got the leads with the chords. And of course, we got a white noise sweep. And then in the second half of the drop, we're just gonna throw the vocals on top of it. And that's pretty much the entire track. We got the first break section going into the first drop, and then the second break section going into a long build-up, and then it builds up to the last drop with the vocals, and the song is over. So I'm gonna play you guys the last drop so y'all can hear what it sounds like. So yeah, that's the song. If you want to hear the full thing, the Spotify link is in the description, and it's also on my channel if you want to check it out. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.